So, Charles, let me ask you, because a lot of people will be asking themselves going into this fourth debate, does it matter? Could it matter? Is there a reason to pay attention to this? Obviously, I've got my own thoughts on it because I'm here. But what's your take?
Well, I think it matters. I think that the race at the moment has been frozen for a long time. And as I've suggested before, the big question now is whether or not that freezing is real. If it is the case that Trump is 60 points to the good and that everyone else is fighting for scraps, then no, the debate's not going to matter. But if people aren't paying attention or there's incumbency factor for Trump, then yeah, we need to know who's going to be left standing. And in that scenario, people are still going to be looking for answers to questions in choosing their candidates. So yeah, it matters. It also matters in the sense that it has been a useful winnowing exercise. And the debates have obviously changed the way that people see the candidates. Tim Scott, for example, was just not really there at the other debates. People noticed it cost him momentum, it cost him funding, it cost him support, and he dropped out. The fact that you still have, especially Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis on the stage, shows you that whether or not they can beat Trump, they have some sticking power.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you another reason why it could matter, MBD, and that is, you guys know in National Review, our mutual pal Andy McCarthy just posted a big piece on how Trump has been denied for now an argument that he's immune from this criminal prosecution by the federal government in Washington, D.C. in front of Judge Chutkan, who is not a Trump fan, it is safe to say. And so he lost that battle with her, and now he's going to try to appeal it, and he's going to try to take it up to the U.S. Supreme Court, saying, I can't be put through this criminal prosecution. There's a question about presidential immunity. These are for acts I took as president, and so on. The point I'm getting to about Andy's piece is he points out that Judge Chutkan might very well, if Trump gets convicted in that D.C. federal case, he does not think it's likely that she would stay imprisonment pending appeal. He said, don't bet on it. So if he gets tried in D.C., and this is a federal case, but you're still pulling from D.C. for all of your jurors, a town that went over 92% for Joe Biden in the last election, the odds of him being convicted in front of such a jury are extremely high for obvious reasons, especially with this judge. You really are looking at a scenario where the likely Republican nominee could not only be a convicted felon by Election Day 2024, but thanks to this judge, could be sitting in jail on Election Day. And that really could be a break glass in case of emergency moment for the Republican Party, especially if that happens prior to the Republican National Convention this summer, at a point where potentially they could still switch out the nominee.
Yeah, it's strange that for many months we've been proceeding as if this were going to be a normal election. And there's like an even lower level of interest, I think, than there had been in the last two presidential election cycles, when in fact this one is by far potentially the most explosive, where you, as you point out, you could have someone in prison. You could also have someone in the morgue by the Election Day, right, 2024. These are highly unusual circumstances. In effect, we shouldn't be here. I mean, Joe, people that are prosecuting Trump under bogus legal theories should cease doing so. It's dangerous to the republic. And perhaps, candidates who are under so many indictments should, get out. But here we are. We may need a an emergency option. We also, these debates matter because these debates are a time for people to hash out disagreements within the party. The effect there are other implications too. Even if you think Trump has got the nomination sewn up, perhaps he's going to look at Nikki Haley and decide this person is a good vice presidential candidate for me, that has enough appeal to suburban voters or to women voters that I need to make up for in 2024. The debate, we're talking about real issues that affect Americans: the border, inflation, seeing how the audience responds to these questions and these candidates can shape the race next year, even if the 4 participants you have tomorrow night are not among the candidates next year. So, it's absolutely matters. We need more debate going into 2024, not less. So, this is a public service, and I'm glad you're the one doing it.
Well, thank you. Co-moderating with Elizabeth Vargas of News Nation and Eliana Johnson, our pal from the Free Beacon. And I just came from a debate meeting. We're ready. I'll tell you that. We're ready. It's going to be a spicy couple of hours. As long as the candidates show up ready to play, which I have every belief they will. Charles, the reason I said this could be actually the last debate entirely is you've got not only, if Trump keeps going up, right? If this debate does nothing to change the trajectory, and let's say Trump goes from 50 to 60% up on these folks to 70 to 80, I mean, at some point the RNC is going to say, we're not doing this anymore. Because at that same time, the votes are going to start to come in Iowa, in New Hampshire, in South Carolina. So all those 2 points could come together at the same time. So let's assume, just for purposes of argument, that nothing happens to change the early races and the trajectory, and Trump wins those races. There's no way Joe Biden's going to debate Donald Trump, I think. Some people disagree with me, but I just don't think Biden can do it. He's going downhill. We'll get to some of his latest snafus, but at the Kennedy Center honors, but I don't think he can do it. So I really think he'll say, I'm not debating an insurrectionist. I'm not debating a convicted felon, an accused felon, an imprisoned felon, wherever Trump is in that process. And so we may actually have an election in November 24 without either candidate having sat for even one debate the entire cycle, which feels deeply wrong.
Well, it feels deeply wrong per se. I'm not sure it feels deeply wrong if the 2 candidates next year are Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I would like to see an election in which ideas were batted around. But if you remember back to the 2020 election, the debate that we got between Biden and Trump was not exactly substantive. It really involved them throwing pies at each other and disgracing the nation. If we could have 2 different candidates, then a debate would be fruitful. I was somewhat dismissive, at least in its effects, of the contest between Ron DeSantis and Governor Newsom from last week. But actually, that is the sort of debate that Americans ought to have. That is a fight between 2 different visions, between people who have taken dramatically different decisions. And within reason, I thought DeSantis did a much better job than Newsom, are willing to hash them out. But I don't think we would get that from Biden and Trump, even if both Biden and Trump were with it, which certainly Biden is not. I think you're exactly right. He's going to use any excuse he can not to have to debate Trump because he can barely get through a press conference or a gaggle at the moment. Trump doesn't seem to want to debate anyone either. I wouldn't be too surprised if Trump tried to underscore the advantage he has in virility by saying, I am leading in the polls, I'm the front runner, I'm going to win in a landslide. Why would I bother debating Joe Biden? So, it's a strange scenario, but I think it's more the product of it being a contest potentially between Biden and Trump than it is the debate itself.
We are sponsored today by Donors Trust, the principled, tax-friendly way to simplify your charitable giving. So many of my viewers have been shocked at the hateful pro-Hamas protests on America's college campuses. If there is any upside to this, it's that many donors are finally pulling their support from these ivory towers. If you're one of them, now the question is, what do you do with your charitable dollars? You should know about Donors Trust. Donors Trust is the oldest and largest donor-advised fund committed to limited government, personal responsibility, and free enterprise. With a giving fund at Donors Trust, you'll have a simpler, tax-friendly way to do your charitable giving. You'll also have a partner who will make sure your gifts stay true to your conservative values. The end of the year is coming fast. Open your fund before the end of December to take advantage of tax savings. Visit donors, there's an S in there, trust.org/MK to see how a fund works and request your free starter kit. Protect and simplify your charitable giving with Donors Trust. Visit donorstrust.org/MK to get started. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.